I would like to call this meeting to order. Could I get a roll call, please?
Storr, Summers, Tinsley, Vashaspati, Weibel, Anderson, Clemens, Clifford, Coert, Douglas,
Here.
Eisenman,
Here.
Esri,
Here.
Furtado, Goss,
Here.
Harper, McGuire, Mitchell, Patterson, Petrie,
Present.
Quisenberry, Rector, Rosales.
Here?
That's it.
Okay. Could I get an approval of the agenda and the addendum? Azare, moved by Azare, second by Mitchell. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, great. Discussion, Patsy? I know you usually got a question or two. Okay, all those opposed? Motion passes. Approval of minutes, August 14th, 2018, moved by Rector, second by John Cliff. Discussion? Thank you, Jack. Discussion? None? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Motion passes. Public participation, I have no request for public participation, but Art is here from Cable as well, that if you had any questions pertaining to that agreement, he will be willing to come up to the front and entertain some of your questions at a later time. Thank you, Art, for coming, by the way. Missed you. Any communications from the board? Patsy?
Well, I just think it's appropriate for the county board to take a moment to be reminded that this is 17 years since 9/11. We do have cake in there, and that seems to be fairly significant in the history of our country. Something local that I want to put on the record, since I'm one of the 5 people who started the Preservation and Conservation Association, I'm going to drape my house in black now that the Burnham Mansion has been demolished.
Esri?
Yes, thank you. I'll just make note, I've done this in the past, but harvest is here. So if you're out and about driving around in the county, be a little more aware, please, of the farm equipment moving up and down the road, and be a little more cautious, slow down, and don't get in such a hurry.
Any further comments, questions, concerns? Well, thank you. Social justice and justice and social service, Kyle?
No, it's Jim McGuire.
Oh, Jim McGuire, okay. Jim, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you can see, the normal list of reports is there, and without dissent, we'll put them on file. The only other business would be semi-annual review of closed session minutes. And I'd ask for a motion to the closed session minutes of dated 5/13/2005, 5/26/2005, 6/6/2005, and 6/8/2005 are eligible to be placed in the open minutes file, and if there's a so motion, I would do that. So we entertain that. Mr. Anderson, is there a second? Is there any discussion? I'm sorry, thank you. Just have to do the motion?
No, that, I would just like to clarify that in that motion, you are opening those sessions of the minutes and then maintaining the rest of them as closed
Okay.
with that motion?
Thank you, I'll accept that. Without any discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. And that completes the chair's report.
Okay, policy, personnel, and appointments. I guess that's me. Pardon? I was going to give it a rector, but I go ahead and I could address this. Unless rectors, you want to take on the challenge? Okay, great. I'll take it a shot. It's only a couple.
That's what I thought
Well, it's only a couple points. You good? I'll go ahead and give it to you, for sure. You could go. Yeah, that way it gives you a shot. Thank you.
Item A, request for the approval of an agreement between Item A1, request approval of an agreement between CU PhD, the County of Champaign, and Champaign County Health Department for provision of public health services by CU PhD to the Champaign County Health Department. Second, by Mr. Anderson. Discussion. Moved by Mr. Anderson. Second. Mr. Clements. Discussion.
No, I suppose it's the same provisions for the health department that we've had in the past. I guess the only change is from a 5-year term to a 10-year term. As some people may have gathered, I'm not exactly happy with the health department, so I don't think it's necessary to extend it. If I had any choice, I'd make it shorter and change their levy. So I'll be voting against this. Thank you.
And I believe there was an additional change, which was a 12-month option to opt out of this agreement. Okay.
Patsy?
Thank you. Well, I was going to vote no, so it wouldn't be on the consent agenda. That's been taken care of. I want to put a couple comments on the record for future boards to be thinking about in relationship to having, excuse me, a county health board. I thoroughly understand why a referendum was put on the ballot and why it got approved. What is troubling to me, having, because of the statutes, served on the Champaign-Urbana Public Health District Board, is really understanding the structure of this, the County Health Board, Public Health District Board, and the Mental Health Board, and realizing because of those organizational structures, there are many things in our county that do not move forward with great speed, and one of the examples, which we've been spending years talking about, is mental health. And these organizations, we're only one of 3 counties that have a public health district. All the other counties are organized under a county health district. That kind of organizational structure then takes care of the public health in the municipalities, takes care of the issues of mental health. Many counties don't have mental health boards, and very few counties have developmental disabilities board. So that really helps the fact that it's under one agency to move issues forward in this county. To undo the structure, I did study it when I was chair, is very difficult, but I would hope somewhere down the line that people will consider and step back and look at if there isn't a way that we can smooth this out, because what is happening right now is each of those agencies are pointing to each other and saying, no, it's your job to take the lead on this, no, it's your job to take the lead on this, and we're not getting anything done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Patsy. Mr. Summers?
I just wanted to point out that while the length of this has been extended from, excuse me, has been extended from 5 to 10, either party has the option to opt out of the contract at any time with a 12-month notice. So we're not truly locked into 10 years of this contract, just to make sure that that's understood.
Any more discussion?
I would like to amend it then to, oh, I'm sorry.
My question is, if this doesn't pass, it seems like there's some fairly important things that this board does, and expire, this renewal starts in 3 months. And as you said, Patsy, it would be a complicated road to go down to come up with, a different plan. What happens in the case that this doesn't pass, if folks vote against it? Sorry, what was that again? Sorry, I don't know who to direct this question to.
Well-
But my concern is, what happens if this doesn't pass?
Ms. Busey?
Well, there would be an issue with providing public health services in the county, because this agreement requires the approval of the County Board of Health, and the Champaign-Urbana Public Health District. The other two bodies, I believe, have already approved it. Isn't that right, Mr. Clemens? So you are the last body to approve this document. It is consistent with how this function has been administered for over the last 10 years, and there aren't any substantive changes to it. So I believe it would be very problematic to residents in the county who are currently receiving services if this contract is not in place on January 1st.
Thank you. Mr. McGuire?
Thank you. I don't understand the extension of 10 years, especially if there is a 12-month or agreement to end it in 12 months anyway. I would say that I'd like to amend it to so it's only 5 years instead of the 10 years, if there's a second.
You say there is a second? Mr. Mitchell, second. So the issue here, when we'll defer back to Ms. Busey, is if the other two entities have passed the other version, then we're going to have another issue. It just goes back to that on timing. Are we okay?
It would have to go back to both of those bodies to see if they were willing to accept that change in the agreement.
Is this discussion for the amendment? Okay, thanks.
Do we know why they decided to switch from 5 to 10?
I've not attended these meetings, and I've not been engaged with county public health in my role as part-time administrator this year. So I really don't know why, other than I think maybe CUPHD and the Board of Health felt like this was coming up rather quickly in terms of they do long-term planning. A lot of the grants are for, 3-year periods. And so from that perspective, having 10 years is better for that long-term planning that is done by the public health district and then ties into the operation for the Board of Health.
It was more or less a time-saving measure because, as she said, the 5 years is coming up so quickly.
Do we know if we were to pass an altered version or reject it, what the time frame would be to have the other two boards pass a resolution?
I believe the Public Health District Board meets monthly. Does the County Board of Health meet every other month? Quarterly. So they would have to probably hold a special meeting if.
Mr. Anderson?
I was just going to comment that typically changes in renewals like this have to do with strategic planning, but that's not been explained. We did hear it was for time saving. I suspect that another interpretation of it, but I would not be inclined to adjust that unless someone were to come forward and say it's not really an issue. If we're just going back to 5 because we feel more comfortable with that, that may not be the best way to go forward, especially if they're trying to accomplish things long-term and they can't, they don't have the freedom maybe that they'd like to invest in the long-term plans when you keep having to renew every 5 years, and they have to tell the grants, the people they're getting grants from, that we're only good for another 2 years or whatever it is, and we'll have to renew. renew. Anyway, I'm not in support of changing the timeline, so I'm not in support of the amendment.
I saw Patsy first, then Mr. Summers, then Mr. McGuire.
He's spoken. I would support this. They've been working under a 5-year cycle, and one of the reasons I would really support it, it's a very poor document. They did not give us a cover memo that explained any of these things in their thinking, and as a courtesy to this board who's going to vote on this, that document should have been included. And I did ask about it. I sent out messages to see if just for some reason it wasn't in my packet. But I really think that is a tremendous omission.
Mr. Summers?
Yeah, just echoing, and it does take a little bit of a leap of assumption here in terms of the reason for the increase in the time, but I would assume as well that it has to do with grants. And I will be the first to say that the decisions that we've had in working with CU Public Health have not always been ones that I've necessarily felt were ones that I would prefer, but we do have folks in the county that are receiving services, and grants are something I think as a board we're going to need to be looking at more closely in our upcoming budgets. And I would hate to do anything that would reduce the ability of the Public Health Board to be able to receive federal dollars to spend on our county taxpayers.
Mr. McGuire?
Thank you. Well, I think it's an interesting thought that the timing for, needs to be longer for grants. I don't know that I've heard of a 10-year grant. Many of them work on 2 and 3 and 4-year grants. We don't, even our reentry grant's only 3 years. They haven't had this issue before. They haven't brought us anything to tell us, to show us that they need a 10-year grant for a federal grant, time period for a federal grant. They haven't been concerned about our needs when it becomes to their reserve growing to 38%. I brought it up last year. They haven't discussed hiring somebody else when we brought that to them. They haven't been concerned about that when restaurants have waited months, even years to be inspected. They want to save the money for something else. So I'm not so sure why it's so important that they have such a long period for their contract, especially when we can end it in 12 months if we want to. We seem to be the people that are asking for this service and paying for the service, but yet have to accept their demands for everything they want to, their needs and wants. I don't think that's acceptable.
Any other discussion on the amendment? Okay, so we're going to vote on the amendment to change the term to 5 years. Correct? All in favor, say aye. 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 Opposed?
Nay.
Can we see a show of hands in support that voted in favor? Opposed? Motion fails. So we'll go back to the original motion on the floor. Discussion on that. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign? Nay. Why didn't somebody call for a roll call? See, they don't try to help us, do they, Geraldo?
I'll call for a roll call.
It's too late now. Sorry. So all who voted in favor? Motion carries. Motion carries. But not on consent.
I'll be your favorite county board member.
The county clerk's report for August 2018 will be placed on file. If there are any questions, he is here. County administrator's report, same thing. Deb, do you have anything to add? Any questions for Deb? Do we need a motion to reschedule the meeting? Under other business? Okay. I seek a motion to reschedule the November 2018 County Board meeting to November 27th, 2018.
Second.
Mr. Goss. Motion by Mr. Goss, second by Mr. Rosales. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Need a motion for the semi-annual review of closed session minutes to keep those closed.
Second.
Ms. Petrie. Mr. Esri with the second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Chair's report, nothing expiring, no items.
You missed the addendum? There's
I'm
an
sorry?
Extra packet, the blue one? 3 and 4? D 3 and 4?
Different piece of paper. Mr. Chair. Under other business, Highway Department. Seek a request, motion to request to send county highway accountant position to the Job Content Evaluation Committee for review and evaluation.
So moved.
Mr. Clifford, second by Mr. Summers. And again, Ms. Busey, this is just to do the study. We're not making a commitment to the position, correct?
That's correct. You will receive a report back probably at your next meeting with regard to a recommendation.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Planning and zoning, seeking a motion to request to send new planning and zoning planner position to the Job Content Evaluation Committee for review and evaluation. We're going to change the rules, so you have to say it and raise your hand at the same time. So I'm going with Ms. Petrie and then Mr. Anderson. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Mr. Hall would be here if we had questions of him, but of course, this is tied into the fact that RPCs didn't want to basically redo or extend, you could say, or renew the contract for the planner position out of their budget, their office. So that was what we discussed last month. So just got to remind everybody.
Thank you. We need reminders. Ms. Petrie?
Just to remind everybody, I'll be back arguing for another member of this department.
You'll be back when?
When we're talking about the 2019 budget.
Okay. Did anybody have any questions for Mr. Hall? Any more discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And there are no items to be placed on the consent agenda for policy, personnel, and appointments.
No, not even. Not even.
Well, the rescheduling of the board meeting probably could go on consent.
All right, we'll put D1 on the consent agenda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rector. Excellent job.
Crowd.
Any further questions? Great job. Great job. Finance, Stephanie Furtado, please.
First up, we have a report from the treasurer. We'll be putting the monthly report on file, and now we're going to hear the cash flow report.
Good evening. First, let's look at the August cash flow report. We have received distributions again. It was a much smaller distribution in August, as most people are not paying their taxes during July and August. But at the end of the day, we show our projection for $5.6 million at the end of the year for the fund balance for the general corporate fund, which is in line with where we want it to be. During the month of August, we had already repaid the $1 million to public safety sales tax, so that's already in there. So we were able to give the folks working on the budget an accurate picture of where we thought things were going to be since we had gotten that loan off of the books. But the $5.6 million, that's a healthy number for the end of the year. So we like the way those projections are going. As far as real estate tax collections go, we are at 95.8% collected for the year. We will be making a distribution during the month of September to all the taxing districts within the county of a little over $100 million. Included in that money will be, of course, the nursing homes part of the levy, and that will be enough money to satisfy the tax anticipation warrants that were issued in January. So we will have that paid off, and then any remaining money that they get from property taxes will go to the nursing homes fund balance. So they'll start receiving a little extra cash for the remaining months of the year. The tax anticipation warrants for the folks that weren't on the board when those were issued, they are allowed to borrow up to 85% of their tax levy for the coming year. They borrowed $1,076,000, and their total levy is $1,247,000. So over the last couple of months of the year, they'll have about $171,000 extra cash coming in. Any questions about cash that we have on hand right now? Ms. Furtado, Patsy has a question.
Oh, I'm so sorry, I did not see your hand. Ms. Petrie.
Thank you. That balance looks nice and robust. But my question is focused on all the things that are hanging over our head in expenses. We're about to forgive a loan to the nursing home. We have other expenses that I heard about at facilities, on and on and on. So either you or Ms. Ogden, I'm jumping ahead, but you're sitting there ahead of that item. But have you all looked ahead to see what that is going to be? All of those things that we know that are hanging over our heads, some of them have been discussed and not approved yet, how that is going to impinge on this balance.
Well, as far as this balance goes, the money paid out on the boiler has already come out of this, since we paid for that already. So that wouldn't affect the bottom line here in that case. Any other projects you'd have to discuss with the folks that are planning the budget.
Any other questions?
Just a couple other notes, just to make sure everybody's aware of it. The nursing home did require $50,000 to cover payroll last time. They paid that back within about a week. This week is a payroll week. The nursing home does have sufficient cash to cover that. So I don't anticipate that we'll need to do any more payroll loans the rest of this year, as long as the 3 payrolls is really what hurts us.
Actually, I have one question. Going back, is the amount of property taxes that we've received, is that about square with previous years?
Yes, yeah. This year's total collection, the big one, of course, is the Champaign Unit 4 School District. Their levy, of course, increased greatly with the building referendum, this being the first year we're collecting on that. So they jumped from $89 million to $111 million this year.
Mr. Goss.
Thank you. I don't know if we can control this, but if we're giving money back to the nursing home, maybe we could actually ask them to pay their health insurance out of that, so we don't keep hitting our health insurance fund and the funds that they seem to be tapping now because they don't have money. Would that be, is that in our control? What's the status of that?
It's not within my control. I hate to kick the can over to Deb. That's really an administrative decision. I know they are doing a balancing act in order to pay vendors in order to keep the doors open right now. And so that's where the priority is the safety of the patients at the nursing home. So they're paying things like utilities, medical vendors. They are the first priority, but we are keeping track of all of these things. Every month we get an updated spreadsheet showing exactly how much was paid by other funds to help support the nursing home. And those are all things that I'm assuming will be wrapped into the closing of the nursing home transaction.
Mr. Goss.
Well, I was just going to thank you for doing that. I just don't want to lose sight of that over time because it's a number that we haven't seen for a while. I think people would be staggered to know what it is.
I don't have those. That's an auditor question or administrative question.
Actually, the number is on the monthly report, the cash flow report that I provide to you each month. The last 2 months, it's come to you at the board meeting instead of the finance committee meeting because the month ends, the meetings are so early, we don't have the statistics. But you will have that information at the county board meeting, and it clearly shows what the outstanding balances are to all of the county's funds from the nursing home.
And I would mention, too, that we discussed that in each of the budget sections during the two-day budget process. Ms. Petrie, did you have a question? Okay. Anybody else before we move on to treasurer's business? All right, so resolution authorizing execution of deed of conveyance of the county's interest of appropriate certificate of purchase on real estate permanent parcel 2428094580019. Do I have a motion? Mr. Goss, second. Mr. Summers. Questions, comments? Mr. Esri.
Yes, thank you. Is this looking at it on the GIS, is this a house?
No,
Or
this is actually a situation where when we were in the process for the tax sale, I'm sorry, the surplus sale, I went through and identified parcels that I thought I needed to approach people, entities, and say, hey, let's get this cleaned up and get it off the rolls. This happened to be one parcel in the middle of about 8 or 9 other parcels that were owned by the village of Sydney. It was a piece of property that was cleared for flood control back when I was in grade school. I remember when they tore down the gas station that was there. And for some reason, right smack dab in the middle, there was a piece of land that never got transferred to the village of Sydney. And so working with our tax agent out of Edwardsville and the Sydney Village Board, we got them to pay the legal fees and recording fees and take that off of our hands. So we don't have to worry about a nasty Joe coming and trying to buy something in the middle of Sydney.
Okay, thanks. I was just trying to do it from the GIS map of the parcel and then looking on like a Google Maps satellite view, and I couldn't quite tell if it was a vacant
nothing
property
there.
or a house.
Thanks. It's behind where that gas station used to be.
Any other questions, comments? All right, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Resolution authorizing the county board chair to assign mobile home tax sales certificate of purchase, permanent parcel 14-023-0072. Do I have a motion? Mr. Clifford? Mr. Rosales, second. Any comments, questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? We will place the auditors. Thank you very much. You have it. Thank you very much. And thank you for continuing to keep us updated with the nursing home and how that's moving. The auditor, we will place that report on file. Next, we're going to go to the county administrator. Here is where you have to be adept at moving between packets. We will be moving back and forth between the blue and yellow packet. We will start in the blue packet. The first is the Labor Management Health Insurance Committee recommendation. If you'd like to follow along, the recommendation is on page 53. The recommended action is that the Finance Committee of the Whole recommends to the County Board approval of authoring the Blue Shield PPO plan for all county employees for fiscal year 2019. The Finance Committee of the Whole recommends the County Board approval of authoring the Delta Dental Voluntary Dental Plan for the period of January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2019, first year of 2-year premium rate lock. The Finance Committee of the Whole recommends to the County Board approval of authoring the IMED Vision Plan as a voluntary plan for the period of January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2019, third year of 4-year premium rate lock. And the Finance Committee of the Whole recommends to the County Board approval of benefit planning consultants of the administrator of the county's flexible spending action plan for the period of January 1st, 2019 to December 31st, 2019, with no increase over current administrative fees. Do I have a motion? Mr. Clifford, do I have a second? Mr. Goss, sorry. Comments, questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, the next up, we're still in the blue packet. Request of approval to release RFP 2018-003 for Champaign County Integrated Property Tax Assessment Extension and Collection System. Just a comment, because I didn't completely understand how this works. We release the RFP in this meeting, and then it will come before the full board once a vendor has been selected for approval. Oh, it'll come back to the cow. It'll come back to the cow, and then the full board. But this item does not then have to go right to the full board. So this is the vote on this. I do have a question on that, Deb. Do I have to move it then?
Yeah, the Finance Committee has to approve the release of the RFP. It will be released, and after we receive responses and have evaluated them, and the evaluation committee recommends the top-ranked firm, that recommendation will come back to Finance. Finance approves it, then a contract will be negotiated and brought to the county board.
So my specific question is, do I have to move this motion? I don't have to? Not in the committee? Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
someone that has to move
Okay.
it for you.
Okay, I
Yeah.
just wanted to
Yeah, I'm
make sure
sorry.
I understood the Robert Rules of Order for that,
Sorry.
since
Yeah,
it's not going to the full board at this time.
Someone needs to move it.
Okay,
yeah.
gotcha. Thank you. Sorry about that. I should have asked that ahead of the meeting. Mr. Patterson. So moved. Do I have a second? Tracy, second. Comments, questions? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, sorry, opposed. Okay. So now we are in number 3, which is in the yellow packet, the fiscal year 2018 general corporate fund budget projection and budget change reports. Ms. Ogden.
Starting with a revenue report for August, the county continues to expect improvement over even the last month in projected revenues. We've talked about for non-business licenses and permits, the strong real estate market, which is driving an increase in document stamp revenues. Also, strong growth in sales taxes as a reflection of a strong economy. And the U of I Flash Index reached its highest level since May of 2016 in August. One of the changes that I want to point out that we have learned about just this month is an increase in projections for local government revenue. The city of Champaign notified the county that it would receive an unplanned surplus TIF distribution related to the expired downtown TIF. And so that amount is expected to be just over $77,000. That's something that we had been advised that we had received the final distribution on. However, again, learned this month that we would receive an additional distribution because of the timing of when the TIF was closed. On top of that, we also were notified that the Village of Mahomet TIF surplus would be in about $20,000 more than what was budgeted. For fees and fines revenues, that's something that last month I had indicated that the county was experiencing an increase in projected revenues over budget. And so you can see here from this chart, which is February of fiscal year 2015 through August of fiscal year 2018, that, and this is a, building month over month until the final amount is in the last column. So you can see that each of these fiscal years, there has been a decline in revenues for fees until we get to about June, and you can see that the revenue projection for 2018 starts to level out with the actual revenues received for 2017. And then in July and August, you can see that revenue has pulled ahead year to date from the previous fiscal year. And so some of the things that are driving this, I know during the legislative budget hearings, you heard the circuit clerk's office talk about the increase in civil cases in relation to the electronic filing. So that's one of the things that is driving this, that we believe is driving this, because the circuit clerk's fees have increased year-to-date over the prior fiscal year-to-date revenues. Also, you heard the Department of Planning and Zoning talk about the proposed solar farms and the anticipated increase in the zoning fees in fiscal year 2018. And finally, electronic home detention fees have also reflected increases. And in discussions with the Sheriff's Office, this is a result of the increased use of home confinement for electronic detention. And this is a chart for fines, and again, you can see this is a little bit more pronounced than the fees, but you can see beginning with fiscal year 2015 all the way through August of 2018, how these fees have continued to decline until we get to July of 2018, and you can see that there is a slight increase in the year-to-date revenue collections versus July of 2017, and again in August of 2018. I still do not have an explanation as to the reason for this, and I don't know that I'm going to have an explanation for that. So just wanted to make you aware, however, that at this point, the anticipated projected increases for fees and fines have held steady for the second month in a row, and I will update you on those again next month. Moving over to the expenditure report, the county anticipates to underspend the budget in both personnel and services. And again, I have made you aware that the purchase document stamps will, the recorder is going to have to come and ask for a budget amendment for an increase in appropriation for purchase document stamps. And this is because the anticipated increase in the document stamp revenues were required to distribute 67% of those revenues to the state. And so that under commodities is one area where we're projecting that the county is going to need to increase appropriations. On the summary page, you can see the total projection for revenue in 2018 is just over $37 million, with a projected expenditure of $36.2 million, resulting in a revenue to expenditure difference of $844,000, and a fund balance projection of $5.4 million. Now, I know Mr. Farney in his cash flow report had, I think, $5.6 million as his projection. I believe the main difference probably between his report and my report is that his report is based on historical averages, and this report is based on what I know about the budget. And one of those things is, as I mentioned earlier, that the recorder's office is going to have to come and ask for a budget amendment to increase appropriations for purchasing document stamps. The percentage of the 2018 expenditure budget as a fund balance is 14.9%. And one of the questions that was asked earlier of Ms. Petrie in regards to the outstanding nursing home loans, one of which the county board will consider forgiving tonight, the $226,000 loan, and then there's an additional $500,000 loan that is due in December. So the total of those two loans is $726,802. The forgiveness of those loans will cause them to be moved from a balance sheet transaction to an expenditure for the general corporate fund. And so that will result in a fund balance of $4.67 million and an ending fund balance as a percentage of the 2018 budget of 12.7%. That is within the county's minimum fund balance requirements of 12.5%. On the budget change report, the addition in August was the Supervisor of Assessments budget amendment to increase appropriation for assessor publications.
Any questions? Mr. Vishwani?
Yeah, I'm curious about the fees and fines. I know you said you don't have an explanation, but I'm wondering if you have the raw data available, like the individual fees and fines, or if that's something that's handled by the departments.
A breakdown of the categories of fees and of the fees and fines.
Well, ideally, you know, a record of each fee and fine, but if it's a simpler breakdown, that as well.
The reports that the auditors posts on the website will have a breakdown by each fee. I do not have a breakdown of raw data of all of the fees and that are within those categories, but I can provide you with a link to the auditor's report that would tell you each of the fee and fine lines and the total collections for those lines.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Patterson.
Since you brought up the fines, I was wondering, so it seemed like the chart was sort of showing like a year to date for each month. Do you have a breakdown where it just shows the dollar amount for that month that you could possibly share with us?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Oh, Patsy, sorry. I didn't see.
Okay, just to be clear on this, these increases, is that a general assumption now that they're just continue to increase, or is just an anomaly?
Well, it depends. You know, e-filing, the circuit clerk's office indicated during the legislative budget hearings that they had several files just dumped on them. So I think in that regard, they probably, because of the accessibility of individuals or corporations to e-file now, there was probably a little bit more of that up front. I can't say in terms of, you know, if that trend would continue. Electronic home confinement for the sheriff's office, you know, that would be a question that would have to be answered of the sheriff's office directly. In terms of zoning cases for solar farms, you know, those actually, oh, Mr. Hall left. From the legislative budget hearings, I know that he was anticipating that there would be additional revenue for that in 2018, and then there would be some additional revenue for permitting, I believe, in 2019. But outside of that, it's, you know, an unknown.
May I have a follow-up, please? I'm having a memory that when Katie was here, that she was indicating that actually revenue from fines was actually still on a downward curve, but you're showing July and August on these upward swings. That's why I asked that question, if this was, are these outliers, or are we going on? So maybe you might ask Katie, get some feeling from Katie and see if this is something we can really be counting on, though these aren't huge amounts of money, I mean, in the overall picture.
So I know for the fiscal year 2019 budget that the circuit clerk had increased their revenue projections slightly, I believe by $50,000 for 2019, above what was budgeted for 2018.
I just have to add this because I have it from an historical perspective, having done this for many, many years, is that the economy also impacts fees and fines. And you saw Tammy mention that the flash index is indicating that the economy is improving. When people are better able to afford to pay their fees and fines, they're more likely to do it than when they can't. And I think that may be part of what this is as well.
Yes.
Well, some of what I was going for is that there's this time of forgiveness on fees and fines. that has been set up by the circuit clerk. And so we don't know how many people will take advantage of it or not. So we may find that there is a downward curve. That's all.
And in regards to the amnesty program, in 2018, we did not budget any revenue for the amnesty program. So whatever revenue the county receives will be in addition to what its anticipation was for those projections.
Any other questions? Thank you. Okay, back to the blue packet. Approval of cable television franchise agreement with Comcast of Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, LLC. Do I have a motion? Mr. Summers, second. Mr. Rosales. Questions? We have somebody here to answer questions, I think. Anybody have any questions? All right, Ms. Petrie.
It's probably hard to negotiate with so many entities. So my question is really hypothetical, and that is, are there any aspects, because of so many entities negotiating, that didn't get in here that you would have liked to have seen in the contract?
No, I think working with Tammy and her group, they did a comprehensive review of the draft that was out there. The draft is not as heavily negotiated as it used to be, because some of the litigation, or the legislation in the last couple of years has changed, and it's really, some of that has gone to the Attorney General's office. Okay. So some of that is with that. Plus, we started with the document that was agreed upon between the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, which is 206 municipalities who really worked hard to come up with a document that all counties and cities could deal with. So we really use this draft knowing going in that some of those hard things have been already taken care of. So we feel comfortable with the document.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Next, the request for the engagement letters for Chapman and Color LLP and Raymond James Inc. for the defeasance or redemption of bonds related to the Champaign County Nursing Home. Mr. Goss, do I have a second? Mr. Anderson, discussion. Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. Next, Budget Amendment 18-00052, Fund 080, General Corporate Department 075, General County, increase appropriations $226,802, increase revenue none from fund balance. Reason to recognize a bad debt pursuant to a resolution for giving a loan to the Champaign County Nursing Home granted for an emergency boiler system replacement in 2016 by resolution number 9732, renewed in 2017 by resolution number 10032. Do I have a motion? Ms. Cowart, and I'm sorry, who's second? Mr. Patterson. Discussion. Mr. Goss.
Yeah, just as a note that this will be kept on the books, like Mr. Forney said earlier, that we're going to keep track of this stuff, so if we can ever get any kind of resolution or repayment, it'll be out there for us to keep track of.
Mr. Esri.
Just a comment, I guess. I kind of find it ironic we're forgiving bad debt to them, and we've never written any bad debt off at the nursing home. It's pretty ironic. We've been supposedly looking that we're going to write it off, and nothing's came of it, and here we're going to, it's called bad debt because that's what it is, and we're writing it off, at least potentially, if the vote passes.
Any other statements of irony?
We could be here a long
Mr.
time.
McGuire.
So where is, I mean, this is being written off, so where is it being written off to, and where is it being kept even after we forgive it to the nursing home. Can someone explain that, please? And the other $500,000 apparently later.
The loans are presently recorded as a balance sheet transaction. So what will happen when the loan is forgiven, which, by the way, the county board will need to approve this resolution forgiving the loan in conjunction with this budget amendment, is that it will be recorded as an expenditure for the general corporate fund. That will move it off of the balance sheet transaction, and it will be, as I stated earlier, an impact to our fund balance. The report that the treasurer keeps, that is the listing of the loans and forgiveness of loans and transfers that have been made to the nursing home, this amount is already recorded on that as a loan, and so he will just move that as to the column that's a forgiven loan, and there will still be a record of it that the county will have through either the sale of the home or continued revenues that are received after the home ceases operation, that hopefully will be able to be, the county will be able to be made whole. There will still be a record of it kept by the treasurer on that report.
Thank you, because it sounds a little strange to say you're going to forgive something, but then take it back later.
I actually have a question. I apologize, I didn't realize we had to vote twice on this. So does it matter that we're doing it in the opposite order? Okay. Sorry about that, folks. I didn't realize that there were two votes. Or if I did, I realized it. Ms. Petrie.
Yes, I'm glad to hear that there's a running tally for this, because those are good reality checks. My back of the envelope calculation is, should the home get sold and everything gets settled, it'll still take the county between 2 and 3 years to get everything leveled out before the county really realizes that they're more in a clear situation. I'd be happy to be wrong, be delighted to be wrong, but every time we talk about one more thing and one more thing, I'm upping the ante closer to 3 years. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? So going back up to 6, request for approval of resolution for giving a loan from the Champaign County General Corporate Fund to the Nursing Home Fund, authorized by resolution number 9732 and loan renewal resolution number 10032. Do I have a motion? Mr. Esri. Second. Mr. Clifford. Discussion. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Now we're back to the yellow packet, and we're going to hear about the General Corporate Fund Consolidated Budget.
Your yellow packet includes the general corporate fund budget broken down by line. And so what I wanted to do, though, is provide more of a summary regarding the budget. And this will address not just the general fund budget, but also the capital asset replacement fund budget and public safety sales tax fund budget. So in 2019, per the county board's direction, the budgets were prepared utilizing available dollars for facilities and software or technology. And so in 2019, the facilities budget includes $1.12 million for the projects that are scheduled in the county's 10-year capital plan. Also, there is funding for new and upgraded software and technology, including real estate cycle software, sheriff's civil process, business office software, jail management software, 24/7 information security operations center, unified messaging solution, which will replace the obsolete voicemail and answering system that the county has, and also expanded utilization of cloud services for backup, storage, and recovery. The 2019 budget also provides reserve funding for future items that are scheduled for replacement in the Capital Asset Replacement Fund. And as you heard during the legislative budget hearings, this is something the county has not been able to do for many years. And per the county board's direction, there is an allocation of $50,000 for recommendations outlined by the Racial Justice Task Force in its final report. Total revenues for 2019 are budgeted at $39.5 million and expenditures at $38.6 million, which is a budget difference of positive $880,985. What I want the county board to remember is that $488,000 is associated with a hospital property tax case, and so it's not likely that the county will receive that additional revenue. We are levying to capture that new growth revenue in the event of a favorable ruling in that case. And it will be documented in the budget documents what the amount associated with that is. One-time revenues that are in the 2019 budget are $375,000, and those are amounts that are owed to general fund departments from the nursing home. So those will go towards our fund balance to restore the fund balance because of those revenues that were lost in prior fiscal years, which leaves an actual budget surplus of just over $17,000.
So this is what we might potentially have to work with. Yeah, I heard that there will be more expenditures in relationship to the Carl case that more than eats this up and then some. So we need to keep that in mind as another expenditure that's coming to the county board.
The state's attorney had asked for, and it already is incorporated in her 2019 budget, for the expenses that she believed she would have in 2019. I know she said that there's a possibility that they could be above and beyond that, but I believe we added $60,000 to her fiscal year 2019 budget for costs that she thought would be related to the Carl case.
I hope that's the correct figure, but that's not what she talked about. It's higher.
Actually, what was discussed recently is going to be coming to you for the 2018 budget. Those expenses are being incurred this year. There will be the highest utilization of the outside consultants is in preparation for the trial, and I think the expectation is that the $60,000 could cover what is required in fiscal 19.
Such as anything that comes up in relationship to the actual trial starting in January, right? Okay.
One thing that I do want to point out is that when the county defeases or redeems the 2015 bonds, there will be $282,000 that will be available in 2019. At this point, we're budgeting for those debt service payments because, you know, we're required to do that through the bond covenants. So, and we will not, it's not likely that we will know in enough time to, you know, it is not likely that we will be able to make a decision about that $282,000 prior to the end of the fiscal year. So those revenue, or that amount, could become available to the county in 2019 for the county to use for additional facility projects or additional software projects. But at this point, it is budgeted for debt service payments in 2019. And this is just a roll-up of the Public Safety Sales Tax Fund. Revenue is budgeted at $4.94 million, expenditures at $4.9 million, reflecting a budget surplus of $42,000.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for Tammy while we have her here? Thank you. Next up, determination to cancel the Special Finance Committee of the Whole meeting scheduled for December 27th, 2018. Do I have a motion? I'm sorry, I didn't hear who said that. But Mr. McGuire, Mr. Rosales, second. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Other business, the semi-annual review of closed session minutes per the state's attorney's memo. There are none that are coming off of closed session for finance. Do I have a motion? Sorry, Mr. Vashaspati, thank you. And second by Mr. Goss. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. And then to your other blue packet, please. Budget Amendment 18-00053, Fund 632, Circuit Clerk, Electronic Citations Department 030, Circuit Clerk, increased appropriations $50,000, increased revenue none from the fund balance. Do I have a motion? Mr. Patterson, second. Mr. Summers. And do I have any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. And finally, Budget Amendment 18-00054, Fund 621, State's Attorney Drug Forfeitures Department 041, State's Attorney, increased appropriation $10,000, increased revenue none from the fund balance. Do I have a motion? Mr. Patterson, second. Mr. Goss, sorry. Discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, so Chair's report, I don't have anything. Designation of items to be placed on the consent agenda, I have A3, 4, C1, 2, 4, 6, C6A, C8, D1, 2, and 3. Or in otherwise, everything, which I don't think has ever happened since I've been chair. And that's finance.
Thank you very much, County Board Member Stephanie Furtado, for that report. I have no report to give. And basically, items to be placed on the consent agenda are items 8D1. Yeah, D1, D2, D3. It's already been done. So I don't have to do any of these. So and then we're adjourned.